Hello and welcome to a new episode of New Earth Awakening. Today, we welcome to the show Grace Williams, the creator of Love Those Vibes. She empowers women on their self-love adventure because it includes exploration, plot twists, and unexpected changes, and it brings vibrance and color into our lives. She is the co-author of This Time It's Personal and a mom of two teens who empowered her to learn how to reparent herself. So, Grace, please start by telling us, the audience as well, how your journey started and how it led you to the work you're doing today.
Sure. I became a parent in my late 30s, and I don't know about the rest of the world, but in the U.S. they call that advanced maternal age, which was a little jarring because I still felt really young and vibrant. Um, but when I became a parent, I realized that all of the things, the supposed tos, the shoulds that I watched other parents do and received as a child were just not the way I wanted to parent, but I didn't know how to do it differently. And so I had early on, it was, obviously when they're infants and babies, there was really no struggle there as to like how to parent. You just meet all their needs because that's it. And when they got their voice, I was sort of torn between like, I, I think they're not supposed to do that, but I'm not responding the way I would have been responding to. And so it felt like a really uncomfortable space of, I'm not really sure how I'm supposed to do this parenting thing because I know I just don't want to do it the way that I received it. And don't get me wrong, there are some things that I received as a child that were just beautiful and amazing, but overall, there was yelling, there was spanking, there was just a constant, like somebody seemed to always be getting in trouble for something, and I just didn't want that environment for my home and my kids. And I also didn't know how to give it to them because what I realized is being a mom started to trigger unhealed things in me. And I would find myself reacting, over things that weren't really that big a deal. And then I would be kind of like, why do I need to react that way? And so I had to really realize that it wasn't what they were doing, it was what had been done my whole life. And what they were doing was bringing up old wounds that just some were big and some were small, but had just never been tended to and healed. And so I had to figure out how to start doing that. But honestly, I didn't start by doing that. I started by listening to a podcast called Mom is in Control, thinking, we're going to whip this whole thing to shape. The house is going to be clean. Everybody's going to help with chores. Everybody's going to go to bed on time. And basically, in the first episode, the host said, it's not really them, it's you. And I turned the podcast off completely. I was like, she's wrong. It's them. And so I finally picked the podcast back up and learned that it was me. It was my triggers. It was my lack of taking just basic care for myself because I was pouring everything into my kids and my family. And so I had to kind of learn what does it even look like to take care of myself. And through that process, I realized that I didn't even know how to love myself. And that's why I couldn't care for myself. And that process was like a few years. It didn't just like happen one night in a podcast episode. It was a journey of like listening to podcasts, reading books. And I was commuting at the time on a train, so I had about an hour's ride every morning and every evening. And I would just drink in all of this information, blogs, podcasts, books, learning about like what I never knew, which is I'm worthy. Just because I am, I'm I deserve love. And even if I'm the only one who ever gives it to me, that's okay. And I shouldn't even expect it from others if I can't learn how to give it to myself. So that's how my whole journey started. And it's been going. It's been great. And I'm so grateful that I got triggered by my kids because if I wasn't, I don't know if I'd ever start the journey.
That's really awesome. I love that story so much. We have unhealed parts and we call those amazing beings into our lives so that they can show us a lot about
Yeah.
ourselves, right?
Yes. they have. Boy, they've showed me so much.
Love that so much. I had a guest in the podcast, and she's specialized in families and parenting and all of that, Efra Chokov. And she said, we don't need to teach them so much. We just need to like let them develop and guide
Yes.
them and like support. You know what I mean?
Yes. I find I do a lot of asking questions because sometimes it's because I'm curious and sometimes it's because I want them to be curious about themselves, or about a situation they're experiencing. And to it, I mean, asking them questions gives them the opportunity to figure out how to navigate it, and they're building skills for later in life.
Love that so much. It's like, yeah, let's talk about that. Let's talk about communicating with children. How do you do that on a daily basis?
Sure. So at this age, I mean, obviously they're teenagers, so there's a lot of conversation, a lot of one-on-one. My youngest, I had to really understand that who's more quiet, not as into conversation, but will open up in the right environment with the right people. And I had to realize that the need for him was autonomy, just being able to try some things for himself. And he switched to online school recently. And so there was a lot of like stress from my end, like, are we doing this right? And I kept checking in, and he was kind of like, can you just let me do it? And then we'll see how it goes. And if we need check-ins, like maybe we don't need them throughout the whole day, like at the end of the day. So it's just constantly being open to conversation and realizing that, if I had a conversation with an adult, right, where I was maybe overstepping a boundary because I cared and I was trying to be helpful, how would I respond to them? I wouldn't be insulted. I wouldn't throw out punishments. I would say, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to impose." Well, we should be doing that with our kids. They're not a belonging. They're not something for us to own. They're a relationship for us to experience. And when they were little, I tried to really focus on, like, I was determined to make no not their first main thing. I mean, and I think most kids, it's just a simple word, they learn it. So I would say things like, that's not for you, that's for this person, or that's for dad, or that's for brother. And so I did when they were little, and I honestly, when they were babies, I would just talk to them like I would adults. And there was always silly baby play, but I always made it a point to like remember that they're going to be adult humans someday. And everything we do now is just giving them layers and layers to become that person that they're meant to be. And I think when you just approach kids like that, knowing that they have their own minds, they have their own likes and dislikes, we're just here, like you said, to guide them and keep the conversations in a curious tone more than I'm definitely not like authoritative or authoritarian. And I know there's different styles of parenting, but I feel like mine's all over the map, and we do have boundaries in the house, and our kids are super respectful, great about those. Um, I always say I lucked out. I had two really great kids, and but I think from the perspective as parents, it's, if we get a note from school about missing assignments, there's not an assumption that they did something wrong. It's like hey, that it's not like you. What's going on? Where do you need support? And I think that's where curiosity's been probably my biggest tool as a parent, is understanding what they do, or at least seeking to understand it. Sometimes I don't always understand.
Yeah, but it's this search for, I want to understand you. I have the best picture of you in my heart, and I'm not assuming anything. I'm asking questions. That's the curiosity. So I really love that, and it resonates really deeply with me. Also, the part with, yeah, treat them like they are their own person as well. not your belonging. That's how you said it. Yeah. I love
Yeah.
that.
I think it's, I wasn't one of those people who spent my life dreaming of becoming a parent. I just, based on how my life flowed, there was a point where I was kind of like, yeah, I probably won't do that. And then when I met my husband and we decided to have kids, it was like, oh, I get to do this. That's great. But I know there's some people who dream of it, right? Their whole life, it's like something they've been dreaming about and attaining. But when you think about it, it's not something, it's someone. And when we can approach the people in our lives, and that's the way with any relationship, our spouse, our friends. I mean, people aren't our things to control and manipulate or even to like over nurture. They're just people who need to experience us in the best way that we can bring ourselves to them.
I love that very much. So basically, what you're referring to is also asking ourselves the question, why do I, quote unquote, want to have a relationship with a partner? Why,
Yeah,
quote unquote, why do I want to have a child? Like,
right.
what is it that is motivating me towards
Yeah,
that? Right? Like to
absolutely.
question,
Yeah.
yeah. But for you, it was more like, um, let's see, I stay open.
Yeah, it really was. I wasn't, I think it was just, I had I'm the youngest of 9 kids. So my older siblings were having children when I was still very young. So I was an aunt when I was, not even 5 years old. And so I was always helping raise, nurture, play with someone's kids. I've always loved kids. I always say I can take kids in small groups. I would never have survived as like a teacher or a camp director or anything like that because I think I do great with kids when there's, 2 or 3 of them. But when I have, 10 or 12, I'm like, okay, that's a little too much at one time for me. I, you know, I always grew up enjoying kids. I was a nanny for a few years when I was in my early 20s. I enjoyed those things, but I never really thought about whether it was something I wanted or not. It was just sort of like if it happens, it happens. I guess for me, it always felt like it would be a natural progression of the right relationship, and that's kind of how I became a parent. But I I'm grateful that I did because like looking back, I can't even imagine my life without the last, 15 years of being a parent.
Yeah, and I mean it brought you this new depth of knowing yourself. I mean, this is really like amazing. So you just stay open. You don't have to force it, and then it comes like a mega blessing for you. And I love this kind of stories, you know? It's like it happens always for our greatest good. Thank you very much for sharing that. So, when you went and started your own self love journey, how was that for you? How did it feel?
It actually wasn't initially intentional. Um, I was, I started, I started by fixing the outside, exercising, trying to work off stress physically. And that helped, obviously, because it's just the nature of what it does. But I started by wanting just to feel as playful as I felt when I was playing with my kids. I wanted that relaxed, grounded feeling everywhere in my life, and I couldn't figure out how to get it. And I came across, at the time, it was a blog called the Abundant Mama Project, and she just I don't even know if she's doing that anymore. That's how long it's been, but she just shared, tips, tools, life stories about finding abundance in your life without chasing material things. And I was like, this is what I'm talking about. And it started with simply, I think she had like a 5-day challenge or something where just every day was just a very short simple thing, and out of that I created, I have a little small house. We don't have a big home. There were 4 of us in it at the time, and I didn't have a room to create a space for myself. But I did have a space in our living room that was sort of tucked away, had its own little seat, a little lamp. And so I sort of created that and said, this is my space every night at this time. Doesn't matter what else is happening in the house. I'm going to give myself these 10 minutes. And what I love is out of that, I started to become consistent and like, oh, I can give myself that time. But what was so cool is that my son was really young at the time, and he took his favorite little blanket and folded it up and put it on the couch that I would use so that I would have a special place to feel comfortable and warm while I was doing that special thing for myself. And I think that's when I realized that what I'm doing is not just important for me, it's really important for them. And the fact that he saw it and reciprocated something I didn't even know I needed was just so beautiful.
Oh my God, that sounds really amazing. I mean, there is so much there in what you just said, you just allow it yourself. And that's already self-love, allowing ourselves those 10 minutes or whatever it may be, and to make a little space that is important and intentional to us and
Yeah.
nourishes.
It,
I love that.
once, once I realized that it didn't have to be a big production. It didn't have to be, creating a room in my home or anything like that. I thought, well, gosh, it's so simple. Like I don't need to make it a big thing. It can be just really small, and that's really how my self love journey's progressed. Is just don't turn your life upside down. Just pause and find small ways to connect with your true self, because I think a lot of times we don't even know our true selves, because when we're young we have layers of what other people expect from us put on us our whole lives. So by the time we're adults we don't always even really know who that is deep down in. So just take that time to get to know your true self. Ask that self what she wants, what she needs, and if it's big, okay, maybe one step to get toward it. Maybe we don't need to take all the steps right now. Because I think when you don't know how to love yourself, looking at something huge, a whole life overhaul is just overwhelming. And I don't think it's sustainable. So I've always tried to seek small ways to do it. And that's kind of how I've tried to help others do it, is just find very small things you can do to just know yourself, love yourself, and gift yourself the time or the things that you need.
I love that very much. And the pausing part, it's like we were also talking previously about the seasons of the year, right? So please elaborate. I love that too.
Yes, absolutely. So I last in January 25, I just felt a need to slow down myself. And so one of the themes for Love Those Vibes was kick the winter blues. It was just really, don't 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 give yourself a hard time about slowing down. Give yourself the slowdown you need. And I realized as I started looking around and doing some research around the topic to try and figure out what I wanted to bring to people, I realized that every region has a dormant season. Whether you're like where I live, we have 4 seasons: winter, spring, summer, fall. Maybe some areas have a wet and a dry season. And that's for a purpose, because Mother Nature knows, the earth knows what it needs. It knows that it can't be constantly in growth mode, that sometimes it needs to be in rest mode. And that's what we need. And I work in an industry, my full time job is in an industry that's very like go, go, go. And I am sort of, the one in the office with like my affirmations on the wall, and where I like come and I get grounded, and they'll find me like come to my desk and find me like deep breathing. And because while I'm in that environment, it doesn't mean I have to be that. And so I really wanted to help people get in touch with embracing that slowdown. And this year I took it a step further. In January, I talked through the whole month of December. I was just like, I really feel like I need a pause. I feel like things have just been flowing, things have been moving so quickly. And so I started trying to say, like, how can I give myself that pause without feeling like I'm supposed to throw a load of laundry in, or I'm supposed to mop a floor, or I'm supposed to plan the next round of content. And so I just really started focusing on the rest that you give yourself and the energy you store up when you do take time and pause. But when you do it in a way that you're not chiding yourself or thinking, I should be doing this, or even further, which I'm not gonna lie, I love a good Netflix binge, but that you're not like, the rest isn't Netflix binging, but you're actually resting and you're doing something that feels good for your soul, whether that's listening to music or dancing or walking or moving or just even sleeping. So I decided to kind of spend the whole month of January this year focused on the pause. And I was so excited when I hit February because the other side of the pause is momentum. And I felt like I built up so much energy because I did not give myself a hard time about anything that I needed to put aside in January. I committed to, if I felt it and I was in touch with myself and I needed to put it aside, I was just going to say, it could wait. If it had to be addressed and it was an emergency, fine. But most of the things in our lives are an emergency. And it felt so good opening up into February and just feeling like, wow, I have all this clarity and this energy. Where do I get to use it now? And that felt amazing. And I'm going to make that a regular practice. I mean, probably can't do that every month throughout the year, but I can find time during my week to pause. I can do it throughout the year in a smaller way. Maybe it's getting back to that little 10-minute evening routine that I created years ago instead of what I've been doing lately.
Exactly. That's what I wanted to say. It's like it goes full circle. You start allowing yourself 10 minutes and you realize, oh my God, this works. I'm consistent. This is awesome.
Yeah,
And then
I
it
know.
goes
And that's
on.
the consistency. Yes, that it starts to build confidence, right?
Exactly. Exactly. The confidence that, yes, I can do this. And then when you see your child bringing you something, because, it's like you understand, oh my gosh, they also understand how important it is
Yeah.
for us to reparent ourselves, to give ourselves what we need. And oh my God, that's so loving. I love that.
It was really cool to see that. And I think what I realized, I think a lot of moms think to themselves, "Oh, I can't take time for myself because my house will be a mess or my kids need to, whatever. My kids need to go here or there or have an activity." But what I realized is that every time I've taken time to nurture myself, I see the benefit of it in my kids, or I see that they get why I need it. And that's been really cool because I think we sort of tell ourselves the story that everything's going to fall apart if I do this. And it's really not.
I love that. Yes, back to not, it's not an emergency. It doesn't have to be addressed right now. It has time.
Right. Right.
Exactly. So thank you very much for sharing that a little bit. And basically, you're talking about looking into our belief systems. Yes. If I don't do this, everything is going to fall apart, whatever that may mean, right? And it starts in childhood. So you're talking basically as well about inner child work or shadow work. Yes. So how do you approach that on a regular basis?
Sure. I really have become I read the book A New Earth by Eckhart Tolle, and I'm not sure if I'm saying his last name correctly. And that really helped me understand presence and awareness in a way that I just never really thought about. Just simply like being so present, when you're cutting vegetables for dinner, just being aware of what you're doing in each moment. And while I'm not always super aware of the cucumbers, I I find that those little practices here and there have helped me pause and realize in a moment like why is this feeling off? And it's helped me get in touch with my inner child in a way that well, why is this feeling off? Because I'm an adult. Nothing's happened recently that should make a situation feel uncomfortable or bring up uncomfortable emotions. So, what are those emotions that are coming up? Where is that coming from? And I find myself a lot, particularly as a mom raising kids, I find myself a lot as they're going through something, pausing and going, and I'll say my son a couple years ago went through something where, and I remembered when I was in fifth grade, I had just a year where it was like, I just felt off as a kid. I wasn't doing my homework like I normally would. I just didn't feel like myself, and I couldn't explain it to anyone. And maybe I was a little temporarily depressed. I don't know. It wasn't like a clinical depression, but there was just something off. And when my son broke his leg, he kind of went through something similar where he was very defeated. It was really hard to get around. He was at an age where you don't want to ask your parents for all of this help with everything you need to do. And all of a sudden, he was completely dependent on us for pretty much everything he needed to do. And I paused in the middle of that. At first, I felt frustrated for him. And I was also, again, hovering, like, how can I help you? What can I do? And I finally said to my husband, like, I think we need to realize that, like, this is his uncomfortable space to go through. And I said, and I shared with my husband, I remember a time when I was younger where I went through it and I didn't understand it myself. And I remember my mom kept going, like, what's wrong with you? What's wrong with you? And I was like, I don't know. Um, and I said to my husband, like, let's let him just be uncomfortable. There's nothing wrong. We know the cause of it. He's been through a lot with the leg and it hurts and it's awkward. Like, let him just be uncomfortable with it. We kind of stepped back and just let him be uncomfortable with it. And it was like once that happened, it was like, okay, I think I want to try going outside and going out with the family because all of that stuff was really challenging in a way that it hadn't been before. So I think, for me, it's taking the moment and being really aware of what my body is doing because our bodies are such great communicators and they give us cues, whether your cue is like an uncomfortable space in your chest or thoughts in your head or maybe you get that little nudge in your gut. There's our bodies telling us something. And further, like deeper work that I've done is I've gone through some somatic healing sessions which have been, I don't teach them, I've attended them and they've been so wonderful, and I'm really grateful for them because I don't, I didn't understand that. And looking back, I realized that there was a time in my life where I gave myself that, but I didn't know what it was. I would just lay on the floor and breathe and let myself relax and sort of let the energy and the emotion flow through me. And so what I do now is really just try to stay aware.
Let's speak a little bit more about self love and how maybe, religion can also bring up, let's say, shame and all of those things, because I've had also other guests here on a podcast speaking about their religious trauma that they had.
Yeah.
So I know that this has been also part of your journey. And I am sure there are a lot of people out there who are also wanting to hear about people who have experienced this in their lives. So please, would you tell us a little bit about that part?
Yes, sure. So I grew up, well, first of all, my perspective on faith and spirituality now is yours should never be telling someone else how they should be doing it. So if we're doing faith or religion or spirituality, it should really be for us personally. And we shouldn't be out there, shaking our finger telling others how to do it. But I very much grew up in an environment with a lot of rules. And it was very, while the concept of freedom through faith was said a lot, the actions didn't match up. And it was almost like there's the term used is saved. you've been saved, but then, oh, here's a whole list of things you need to make sure you do so that you stay in everybody's good graces and probably in God's good graces too. And so that was sort of the my very general summarization of the perspectives I was raised with was constantly doing something and always concerned about how things would be viewed by other people. Were we behaving properly? Were we dressed properly? Were we doing all the things we were supposed to do? And it was just such a constant book of rules that, and one of the teachings was that there's nothing you can ever do to please God. And I remember the analogy was always like, no matter what you do, it's just no better than dirty, smelly rags that you use to clean. And so I grew up in an environment where we were constantly being told that nothing we did was ever good enough for anyone, not even God. That just even as we were born, we were no better than a pile of dirty rags that you've just cleaned your house with. And so the concept of loving myself was like, it was almost like you should be grateful to have the love, whether it's from God, whether it's from other people. And so that, um, I didn't realize it growing up, but it never felt right. And I never could put a finger on it, but I was never under other teaching that gave me the opportunity to explore that maybe this doesn't fit. And so it wasn't until I became a young adult and I truly believe that that teaching is what left me susceptible to living in a relationship, my first marriage, where I was being abused physically, mentally, emotionally. And looking back, I realized that I settled for the first thing that felt like love and ignored all the red flags around it because I didn't really understand what love is supposed to feel like because I was getting such a distorted view of it. And what I always say in our house, you see, I have a little grandbaby. They're just toddlers, and I always say to everyone in this house, like no matter what toddlers do that can drive you crazy in a day because they take a lot of energy, everything we do and say to them here in this house should be so supportive, loving, beautiful, so that when they walk out of this house and someone mistreats them, they immediately know that that's not right, that that's not healthy for me. Because I didn't have that. And my husband had it in a different way. His family wasn't terribly religious, but it was very much like we're Generation X. So it was very much like, do as you say, not, kids don't have a voice. And, we're trying to live our lives differently. And I'm grateful that my grandkids live here because my kids are teens and they're able to see, how to nurture the way that they were nurtured and to be able to yes have boundaries and teach things but also to love each other and honor each other in such a way right here in our home that the minute we walk out that door and someone mistreats us or doesn't respect our boundaries or doesn't value us, it's glaring and visible and we can't ignore it, and we know something in us says that's not love, that's not friendship, that's not you know decency. And so that's really what I've learned out of my journey. It was hard and there were so many difficult spaces in there. And I went through periods where I kept trying to sort of do the right thing. And the right thing always felt like it was counter to my own well being and survival. And I remember having a conversation with my mom when I was a young adult in the midst of, living in a domestic violence situation and just saying to her, like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do. I just want somebody to tell me. And surprisingly, my mom's response was, you're the only one who knows what that is. And my mom was the one who brought me into that religious environment. It was the one who always taught me, right, to do the right thing, follow all the rules. So for her to say that I was the only one who would truly know what the right thing was just mind blowing. And then I felt really ill equipped because I was like, I don't know how to do that. And I sort of spent I always say my first act of self love was saving myself from the violence because I didn't really know how to do it. I just know that I needed something, and this was probably going to kill me if I stayed there. And I know that sounds dramatic, but it's truly those are like conversations I would have with myself when I was alone. Like if I don't know how to do the next thing I need to do for myself, but if I stay here, I'm not going to be alive to do the next thing. So I really have to figure it out. And that's really, that's how the religious upbringing played into my life. And um I put, I didn't immediately like walk away from that relationship. And all of a sudden I was like, oh, I love myself and I'm so good at life. I had so many pitfalls and so many things that what I did is I walked away from that relationship and I found myself, you know, in friendships and family relationships where all I was doing is just giving all of myself to everyone around me, um, to the point where even financially, I lived with, family members that I loved, but even financially, I was like pouring into our shared home life in a way that was like, why do I not have, any money left to like take a vacation or even, go out to dinner with friends? And so I had to like understand that again, none of that really came until I settled into my life here now with my husband and my kids, of understanding that like pouring out to myself all the time and never pouring back in is like I'm exhausted. And I think I was probably exhausted from doing it before I even had my kids. So when they came and I tried to do it, I had to figure out something else. And I was like, whatever we're doing here is not working. And again, I tried to fix all of them. And then I realized that it's not them, it's that I don't know how to nurture myself. And I had to learn that I was worthy to be nurtured and teaching myself about worth. I took a coaching group and the concept of worth came up among the few of us in the group. And I was like, I literally I went and Googled multiple definitions, different perspectives, because I had never really experienced even a conversation among grown women about self-worth. It felt really cool, but it was also like, why is this so unfamiliar to me? And so I literally dove in and was like, oh, this, we're worthy just because we exist. We all equally deserve the love, the dreams, whatever it is in us. We're worthy and we deserve it. And that was just mind blowing to me.
Thank you very much, Grace, for showing up so raw and just so vulnerable and open. I love how you describe this journey of finding your self love and going through this abuse and these feelings of unworthiness, and I guess a lot of people watching right now, they totally understand, and feel also how it can be, for us when we have grown up. Yeah, basically, yeah, thinking that we are not worthy of whatever it may be, you know what I mean? Even
Yeah.
of unconditional love, And well, I really like no matter what you do, you can never please God. Well, that must have been really a big one, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah. It's a big responsibility.
wow.
Yeah.
So thank you very much for reminding everyone that we are worthy just because we exist. End of it, right? And we're worthy of loving ourselves. So
Yes.
thank you very much. I love those vibes.
Thank you. I love those vibes.
Circling back. And so, would you please share with the community what your highest vision for the new earth is that we are co creating right now, just by sitting here and sharing our stories and our truth and how that taught us self love?
Yes. And I think from my perspective is, get uncomfortable, learn it for yourself, because when you do, it, the ripple, just like when a pebble goes into a lake, the ripple that happens is you start to impact your family without even intending to. My purpose wasn't once I realized I needed something, I was like, okay, I need to stop trying to fix them and just deal with what I'm struggling with. But what happened naturally was it impacted their lives. And it started to make my home life more beautiful. There were less debates, between the kids. There were less arguments. There were no punishments. We don't have punishments in our house, not because life is perfect, but because we find a way around it. I don't get to go around punishing adults. Like, why would I do that to children? So we don't have punishments. There's boundaries, and you have freedom. And if you cross the line and it's not safe for you, we pull back the freedoms because clearly you're not ready for it. But here's the thing: it's that ripple happens. So when you nurture yourself and learn to truly love yourself, the ugly parts, the uncomfortable parts, the beautiful parts, the ones that make you proud, all of them, because all of them make you who you are. That ripple starts to happen with your closest friends and family. It starts to happen in your community, where your children go to school, where you work, where you do business. And then at some point, right, we're all doing this. It starts to impact the world around us and globally. And I have some perspectives on things that I see here in the United States. And I just often, when I see things, I think, now, granted, I get that some things are just not right, not evil, not moral. I mean, sorry, evil and not moral. But ultimately, I think people build to that. And I think a seed that could have been planted to keep them from arriving there is self love. And my goal is to just help everyone that I meet love themselves because it's going to make a ripple effect. And all of the ripples are just going to make this beautiful space for everyone to be in.
Thank you very much, Grace. That's really powerful. I tend to say the word that we see outside is the word that is just inside of us. So taking care of that is going to take care and ripple out, as you just said. I love that. Thank
It
you.
really does.
Yes. So, and now, do you have any parting messages for the audience? Something that you want to share right now that you feel called to say?
Yes, just if there's any part of you that thinks how you're experiencing life, that there's something different, something more, something better meant for you, you're absolutely right. And that's in you for a reason. Explore it. There are layers on top of the authentic you, the truest part of you. Those layers, most of them have been placed there by someone else, by society. You can just start to peel those layers back, and it's going to be uncomfortable sometimes. But ultimately, when you do it, you're going to reveal your truest self. You're going to learn to nurture that self and love yourself. And it takes time and work. And we're here, people like Carolina, we're here. We're here to help you on that journey because it's not always easy. And that's why I always call it an adventure because adventures have the tough parts, but then they always also have these really amazing, exciting parts. And you're going to find that too. So it's not just going to be discomfort and, and uncomfortable things. You're going to find your adventure and it's going to be beautiful and you're not going to regret it.
Thank you, Grace, very much for being a part of the Earth crew on Earth here.
Thank you. I
And
love that Earth crew.
yes. Yeah, or, team of guides. They're not part of the Earth crew. You understand what I mean, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, thanks to everyone watching for being part of the Earth crew as well. And I hope you enjoyed this episode with the amazing Grace Williams. And we will be posting her links below so that you can find her amazing work and her free gift for you. And thank you, Grace, again. Namaste.
Thank you